Hi there, welcome to Athletic Wise, where like-minded people come to connect. We focus on sports science, in particular neuroscience, and how it relates to the sports we love. In today's edition of the High Performance Speaker Series, we'll be discussing teaching. I recently had the absolute pleasure of reading Belfry Hockey, written by Darryl Belfry and Scott Powers. This soon-to-be-released book offers pragmatic examples of how neuroscience and motor learning are eloquently and effectively used in teaching skills to the greatest players in the game. Darryl is the most sought-after skill coach in the world. He currently works with the top athletes in the NHL, and his input is requested from pro teams, national teams globally. Along with working privately with these athletes, Darryl's on staff at the Toronto Maple Leafs. First off, Darryl, thanks very much for agreeing to be interviewed by Athletic Wise, and huge congratulations on publishing your book.
Thanks, Syl. Yeah, thanks for having me. This is an awesome platform that you're doing, and it's a privilege to have the opportunity to come on and talk about, not only the book, but just like the different applications of just teaching and the whole neuroscience tie-in. I think it's going to be an awesome discussion.
Fantastic. Yeah, one of the main reasons I love working with you in general is your attitude, which was quite evident in the book. You place no ceiling on yourself or any of the players you work with. You use brilliant tactics to shift an athlete's mindset to one of excitement. Now, is that a fundamental requirement for your athletes in their progression?
Yeah, I think that the athlete's mood and being able to adapt the athlete's mood is really important in teaching. And so there's many times in which I'm trying to create a very happy athlete by manipulating the success rates of what we're working on to make sure that their success rate is going up and up and up and they're feeling really good. And then I want to bring them right back down and create a high degree of like really a lot of focus and bring the success rate down where it's very low, so that there's a feeling of accomplishment. So to me, teaching, it's about you're trying to express something through the athlete. And at the end of the day, the athlete has to be able to express it or feel like they're accomplishing something. So it's no good just to have a happy-go-lucky athlete all the time. You do want them to be like some suffering, but then bring it through the process where ultimately they feel a sense of accomplishment and they feel like they can use what it is that you're doing.
Yeah, that's excellent. I thought it was quite interesting, actually, going through the book. I noticed like a theme. So you seem to do everything in the opposite direction to convention. For example, if you have a group, you teach from the top down. If you're teaching skating, you teach from the top down. You're talking about shooting, you're instructing from the bottom up, or you start on the weak side. Now that is very different to convention. Is that intentional?
Very much so. When I started, I really felt like in order for me to have any level of success in what it was I was doing, I would have to be both different and better. I couldn't be just one or the other. I couldn't just be different. And I couldn't just be better. So I didn't want to be, I needed to be unique, and I need to be able to produce results that were above and beyond what everyone else was producing at that time in order for me to be able to establish like credibility, because I was coming from so far back, like no playing career, no teaching, no education, no real anything to hang your hat on that this would be successful. So if I was going to take a run at it, I had to challenge everything that was going on and try to find inefficiencies and see if there were things that I could do that were different that would produce greater results. And I found that the best parts of what I could do was find the exact opposite. So whatever someone was doing, I would look at that and then see, what if I did the exact opposite of that? That would give me the greatest potential of innovation or opportunity to do something different. And sometimes it worked out really well and produced great results. Sometimes the results were just marginal, and sometimes, it fell flat. But for me to achieve my goal, which was relevance and still is to a large degree is to try to remain relevant, is I have to be different and better. So, and I even do it with myself. Like over time you build like certain structures that lead you down a path to achieve success with players. But if I can find something that will just produce just a little bit more, like a little bit more success, I'm willing to abandon something that I've worked on or worked with for a long time. And I think that attitude is really important. You have to be, there's something that you can do, not get married to something or attached to a way. I think you have to, my way is the way that works the best at that time. And if I can find a better way, we're using that one. That's always been my very adaptable and moldable. But again, like it comes a little bit from my beginning and of how I started and the desperate need to be different and better.
Oh, that's so interesting. Well, thanks for that. You use the term, or you say all learning is brain learning. So, well, brain learning is really the brain changing, but our brains have a negativity bias. So this negativity bias isn't really conducive to the best learning, but you have a way of turning a negative habit or situation into an opportunity. So you give permission for failure. So misses will be part of the experience, and you're really adept at flipping that bias. So is that why your teaching is so prestigious?
Yeah, the attitude towards all learning is brain learning is because there is an attitude in our field that there's some things you can and some things you can't influence. And I've never believed that. I always think that anything, you can influence anything. You just need a willing learner and someone who's really dedicated to trying to find the results. So the brain learning is really important. And I really feel like trying to have a positive attitude towards it, or also trying to take, like, if let's say I'm trying to fix like a bad habit, there's something about a player that they're doing, that there's a movement pattern that just doesn't have any projectability. I try not to frame that as a bad habit. Like, hey, like this is something you need to fix. I try to frame everything like it's a new skill. So if it's a bad habit, I'm going to say, hey, like you have this thing that's inefficient. It's ineffective. It doesn't have a lot of projectability. We can't stack anything on top of it. It really is a spot that we should influence. But I think that there's another skill that you could learn. So the player's already thinking new instead of, oh no, now I got to fix something. Like anytime you say you have a bad habit and you start endeavoring upon fixing someone's bad habit, as soon as you say like I'm fixing something, the player already thinks, oh, this is going to be like a long process. It's going to be wrought with failure. It's going to feel terrible. Like you're already setting an attitude. But if I take that same skill, like I am trying to influence that bad habit. I'm not ducking that, but I'm framing it to the athlete. This is new. As soon as you say it's new, there's a whole different acceptance towards failure. They're used to like, hey, yeah, like this is new, it's going to take a little while for me to get used to it. It's going to feel a little bit different. It's different than what I normally do. It just creates a much better mental environment for the athlete. So I'm giving permission in a variety of different ways, but a lot of times the first outset of permission of failure is framing or contextualizing the actual thing you're trying to influence by setting it up as new. This is something that is new. And the truth is, it's new to them, but it's not necessarily new. You're influencing this bad habit. And all I need to do is make it feel just a little bit better, and they're going to adopt it as a new part of their thing. So I think it's just how you shape things with the athlete is really important. And the brain is a powerful instrument to be able to, create a mood and emotion through what it is that they're learning through their brain, which I think is an accelerator.
For sure. So it's not like you're just bending the game, you're bending the brain by the sounds of it.
Very, very, very much. Well, sometimes you're trying to trick it too. Like you try to trick the athlete into believing like this is something new. And when instead of saying this is prohibiting, this is a problem, it needs to be fixed, we can't go to the next step unless you change this, which all those statements are true. But if you frame it that way, you're creating a level of expectation for failure on the athlete that I think is, they're going to wallow in that longer than you need to.
Gotcha. Well, I've had the privilege of being to many of your ICE sessions. We've worked together for a long time now. So I obviously have seen how strikingly different your sessions are to anything else. And, you know, there's a real fluidity, and it's like you don't waste any time. The minute you're on the ice, you know, it's a very effective use of time. And, you know, you don't use any apparatuses, you don't do stations, which you identify in the book. So, you know, you have that many more repetitions in your sessions. Now, do you think that's a reason for your success? The athlete, it's like just the way you structure the ice sessions?
Oh, I'm very conscious of it. I do believe it's a contributor, yes. The practice structure, how you're training, I think is key. And the reason, what I think you're trying to do is you're trying to create a variable instance learning. So I want to take a skill that I'm trying to influence, and I want to get as many different types of exposures to that skill as I can. So what the player doesn't realize, unless they've been on the ice with me many times, is I have an undercurrent that is running the whole time. So I'm working on 1, 2, maybe 3 skills the entire time we're on the ice. But I'm using all these other different game situations. I'm attaching certain things to it. So at one point, I'm trying to attach skating speed to it. At another time, I'm trying to create decision-making as to where that skill should go in the sequence of the skills that we're doing. I'm trying to add like a stick handling component to it where they have to be evasive, or there's a competitive component to it. Like I'm trying to take that skill and not leave it in isolation, which often happens. Like we say, okay, we're going to work on X. So we work on just that. And then when we're ready to move on, then we work on Y. Well, then there's no relationship between X and Y. And I think that makes it difficult for the athlete to learn. It's better if there's a relationship between what you're doing. And again, like the variable instances are so critical. You want to have as many different ways in which they can express the skill, and many different ways in which they can come in contact with it, because that's going to speed up their ability to transfer.
Gotcha. That's excellent. So behind the scenes, you know, you basically say that you feel an athlete's progression is 100% your responsibility. But do you like to convey to the athlete that they are equally responsible? So it's basically self-empowering for the athlete?
Yeah, like, I mean, I want there to be, the reason I'm solely responsible for, in my mind, the athlete's development, and it's easier for me to frame it that way for myself, is that it forces me to be all in with problem solving. I got to be all in with that. The player's counting on me because we're going to run into hurdles and problems, and there's going to be situations where it's dicey as to whether we're going to be able to move on or not. So I have to be all in with, like, I can't look at the athlete and go, well, you know, they have restrictions. So they have physical restrictions. So, well, that explains why I should be able to give up on this. No, there's bridges you can build. There's things you can do. You have to be creative and problem solve. So I think that that aspect of it is really important to create some ownership. The other part of it that I think is really underrated is I'm also responsible for moving the athlete through the relationship with me. So I need to move them through the stages. They can't just be stuck with me teaching them. At some point, they have to be asking questions. I become a facilitator to what they want to do. Or in a perfect world, I'm now like leading from behind and not in the front, dragging them. They're dragging me with their questions and their ideas. So the way I get them to take more responsibility for their learning is that I want them to come with a good effort and an enthusiasm, but I'm also trying to engage them as to ask them how they feel, what they think they could do next, where could this fit in a game, where do they see this applicability, which creates an exchange. And when I create the exchange, I'm moving the player through the relationship. I think that that's really important. And just because I've moved you through the relationship on the first day and our first skill, when we come back and I'm trying to teach another skill, we go back to the beginning of that relationship. So it doesn't stay like once I've moved them through and now we're like co-teaching, like he's teaching me, I'm teaching him, like it's a real exchange. The next day with the next skill, we're not starting off that way. And so I think that that's a really important distinction that I've stumbled upon that has really helped me create a lot of opportunity with my athletes who are, many of them are at the level where they're trying to reinvent. Mm-hmm. They're looking to reinvent things. And so they already have a high level of responsibility over their own game, but it's how we're moving through that relationship that's, I think, really important.
Oh, that's great. So you obviously stretch yourself every day in terms of research, reflection, and meticulous preparation for your ice sessions, but you also stretch the athlete. How do you hope to stretch the teaching profession as a whole by writing this book?
I think it's more to acknowledge how difficult teaching actually is. And I know in hockey and hockey development, there's so much emphasis on, the actual skills, the what are you teaching and what drills are you using to teach what you're doing. And there really isn't as much information that's targeted to talk about how to deliver that message and how important the relationship is between you and the student and how that can be an accelerator or it can slow down that process. So I think the biggest message I'm trying to convey in this book is to show, illustrate my path of discovery on a lot of these things of what things that I did that were really good for me, that were accelerators in my own growth, that allowed me to be a better steward to my athletes. And then also some of the mistakes that I made that, made it a lot slower for my progress. But I think just acknowledging like teaching is tough. And at some point, everybody's going to be a teacher. It doesn't matter who you are or what you do. At some point, you're going to be a teacher. You're going to be called upon to teach somebody something. And so I happen to do it in hockey, but I think a lot of these principles are good for anything, whether you're, a mother trying to teach your kids something, or whether you're an actual teacher in a classroom, or you're, an executive trying to teach skills to your staff to try to pull things out. I think everybody's going to be a teacher, and this is no different. And my path is less about hockey and more about becoming a teacher and what that means and how that became an accelerator to give me the opportunities that I've enjoyed.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I like the term you used in your book. You call it bubbling up to consciousness. So I think that has the potential to, expose the gaps potentially in teaching. Yes. So in terms of motor learning, we have these consolidated theories that an athlete will progress through 3 distinct stages. So you have initially a cognitive stage, an associative stage, and an autonomous stage. And oftentimes an athlete is very mechanical as they go through it, whereas you seem to instill a fluidity of movement throughout that teaching process. do you have any particular, any explanation for that? Or
Yeah, I think like the associative stage has so much, like it is a transition. And if you can hang out in that world a lot, I think that that's kind of the sweet spot where you're trying to get into that space, and you're kind of, because and the reason I say that is because I try, when I'm working with any player for any skill, is I try to attach whatever it is that I'm working on to their best asset. So what is it that they have that's their best asset? So let's say in hockey, let's say it's their skating speed. This player just is a really good skater. So I'm going to try to attach any new skill to that association of their skating, because that's going to be familiar to them as we're trying to bring these other elements in place. They'll feel a smoothness through their best asset. If it's, let's say they're really highly intelligent and, that's their best asset. Well, the more I can illustrate different game situations that they can use the skill, or different ways in which they can apply it in a competitive advantage perspective, the greater, deeper learning that they have towards how it applies. Well, that's how I'm going to attach. That's how I'm going to work on that skill. I'm going to attach it through the best asset. I think that the best asset can be a carrier that creates familiarity, it breeds confidence, and you can pull other things that are less familiar through that to make it, whether it's more fluid, whether it's whether it shortens the development time. So I would classify that as more of that associative stage. If you do a good job with that and it's attached to their best asset, you're now doing something that it's really natural to the player. Like it feels natural because it's attached to something that they're very good at. So now when you move into like the last stage, the autonomous stage, it's a lot easier. You're not forcing that. It comes naturally because the player is so attached to what they do best. And I think that is a absolutely critical part of development that we sometimes miss. We view the skill in isolation, and we don't look at the individual and tailor the development to that individual and what they do best. And I think the more we can do that, the more fluid it's going to be.
that's excellent. And your particular teaching style, I mean, you didn't model off anyone, but yet writing this book, there's going to be likely so many other skills teachers that are going to try and emulate you, or beyond hockey as well. In your book, you provided rationale for what you're doing, but you didn't give specifics about a skill. Was that intentional? Were you hoping like for future teachers to be creative? Like, are you trying to instill creativity?
Absolutely. The most fear I would have in writing the book is that someone would adopt what I'm doing as verbatim. Like, oh, that's what he did. That's what worked for him. So I'm going to do that. The issue is the book is 300 pages long. There's a lot you have to cut out. There's a lot of details you have to cut out to make it read smoothly and so there's a lot of context that's missing. And so if you try to just adopt something, you're missing so much context. It's going to be difficult to take it verbatim because you don't have the same experience level with it that I had. Like everybody's experience is different. So my objective with the book is more to have someone take a look at what I'm talking about as a starting point for their own research. They say, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe I could start taking a look at that. It's something I never looked at before, but they're relating it to their own experience. So I was very cautious to say, like, this is, not say, well, this is how I teach this, because that was really good for me to teach that particular player. But the truth is, so like, I wrote that book basically like last summer, well, you know what I mean? And in the time it was from the time I finished writing my part of the book through the development stage of the book, I've already changed and evolved. So I don't want people to be locked in to, well, this is Darryl's method and it worked for him, so I'm just going to model that without having the context and not realizing, like, so many of these things, like, yeah, some of them are real home truths that are going to be difficult for me to evolve from, like they're real principles, but the way in which I teach and the actual minute details, that's going to change. And so I tried to be more principle based and really give some examples to illustrate, but try to make it so, like, this is your starting point. You read this book, this is your starting point for your own experience, your own research. I think that's the best, that's the best approach. That's the approach I've always taken with the books that I've read. So I want to make sure that it becomes just a platform for others to grow from, to start their own research and their own personal development.
No, that's excellent. So it made me laugh. One of the chapters you talk about, like, sickness, quote unquote, having a sickness. Your sickness is basically to the betterment of all of us. And did you bring that up because it shows the level of dedication that's needed to achieve mastery at something?
I think you have to be all in on whatever it is that you're trying to do. If you want, like I said, when I first started, I knew I only really had one path, and I had to be different and I had to be better. And so it became a relentless pursuit to be the best and come up with the best ideas or the best thoughts and just really give the best to my athletes so they could produce the best results that they could. Because I'm trying to contribute to that. So I think that what the sickness is that it becomes all consuming and there's no backup plan. You're all in. And I think that's the only way. It doesn't matter whether it's, you're trying to be a professional athlete, you're trying to be a doctor, you're trying to be a skills coach, whatever it is that you're trying to do, the more you're all in, and it consumes you. Like, it's an everyday thing for me. Like, I haven't had a day off in 20 years because my mind is always going. Like, I'm thinking about something, I'm researching something, I'm watching video. I think if you want to be good at anything, that's the first step. It's like, I call it a sickness, where it's like you catch this bug and you just can't shake it. Like, it just consumes you. And I'm fortunate because my sickness has been a true love affair with what I do. And I'm incredibly passionate about it. And I just don't think you can achieve anything with real, like, with any level of real, like, lasting significance if you don't have that. So I wanted to write something that illustrated, like, how all in I felt I needed to be. But for me, it was like I had no backup plan. Like, there's no education, there's no other skill sets. There's not, like, I had to be all in. And perhaps that jades my perspective, where there's others who are multi-talented. They have a lot of ability to be able to pivot and do different things. I wasn't in that position. This is what I love to do. I'm all in. I feel like that's what I had to do.
Oh, love it. It's amazing. So you personally, you describe it in the book, you went from director to collaborator to facilitator to co-teacher. So what's next in your evolution?
Well, I think for me, it's to mentor. So, like, it's got to come back full circle. So when I first started, I had a mentor, someone who was, an older person who had been there, kind of done that. And his attitude was, I see you have all this excitement. I see you have all these ideas. I think I can help you learn to teach. So I'm going to help you learn to teach. And she's like, I don't want to do any drills. I don't want to do anything like that. I just want to teach you how to teach. And so for years, I thought that the best way that I could repay this gentleman back for his investment and belief in me at a time when nobody had any reason to invest or believe in me in any way. He was the only one. I thought the best way I could repay him is to one day find the next one like me and do the same thing. So I had every vision of like showing up at a rink one day and seeing some punk kid like me who is trying to do something different and was like really rubbing the establishment the wrong way and try to insulate that person the way I was insulated by him to provide me this opportunity to grow. And of course now, like, because of all the different things I've been able to do, now I feel like, well, maybe I don't need to mentor one person. Maybe there's an opportunity to mentor anybody who reads this book. Because the trouble with my profession too, it's not like I can invite a lot of people to come and say, hey, do you want to watch me train, some NHL superstar? Like, it doesn't work like that. Like, you're not going to be able to see me in that environment. So it's a very closed, very private thing. So I've been thinking over the years, like, how can I leave? Like, I've acquired all this knowledge. How do I parlay that? It's unlikely I'm going to be showing up at a rink to teach one person. It's a better idea now to leverage kind of these accomplishments and see if we can spark ideas in a lot of people. And maybe it's not just hockey. Like, maybe it's other things that someone reads the book and they feel like they can apply it in other things. That's what it ultimately became from. So I think my next step is a mentorship of the next generation of passionate people that are trying to figure out their way, but need like a head start or a platform to build from.
That's excellent. As far as hockey specifics, like along the same lines, will there be any chance to do any like hands-on or virtual conferences or clinics?
I really think that that's really the next step. I want to get people who've read the book to come in and we can have some deeper dives into what it is that we're actually doing. We're actually scheduled one for last April, and then COVID hit and we couldn't do it. But that was going to be like a preview of the book, of like a lot of the different ideas that we've had come with the book. So now, of course, we're hoping to do it now this April coming up, to do the same thing where we bring people in and they have a chance. Now, whether that's virtual or whether that's hopefully it's in person. But I definitely want to have that as part of the book, is an opportunity for people to read the book and then share their experience with some of the ideas, and then have a collaboration, and then they can see me actually work and work through some of these principles that I've described. I think would be super cool. So definitely want to do that. So hopefully first one will be in April.
Excellent. So when is the book actually being released?
November 3rd. So not too long from now, November 3rd. I'm super excited to see. There's been a lot of pre-sales on it. So I think there's some people that are anxious to get a hold of it. And I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, you've always been an extremely busy guy. I can't even imagine the floodgates come November. That's really exciting. So is there anything else that you'd like to add or to mention to the viewers?
I just think, like, again, like most of the stuff that I do it's hockey. People talk to me, it's always hockey related work that I've done with, specific players. What I'm excited about is this type of thing where we're talking, it's a hockey book, but it's not. It's about teaching, and you're coming at it from some of the way that which the brain works and how I'm trying to tap into that. Like, there's an application there, and I'm really excited to see if there's applications here and what people come from different walks of life to apply some of this stuff or are interested in understanding more about it. And I think that's going to be my favorite part, is as much as I love talking hockey and I can do it all day and I do enjoy it, I'm really excited to see how this can spread in other areas. And so that's why I'm so excited to do this with you. One, because, I just love you and our relationship, and I love that. But I also I like it because it's a different application to some of these principles. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, there's no shortage of applications. Absolutely. Well, I can't thank you enough, Darryl. It's been so insightful, truly incredible. I really appreciate your time, to know everyone's going to be just blown away by your book. We're all very excited for you. So if anyone wants any more information, they can go to www.athleticwise.com. They can also look up Belfry Hockey. So once again, Darryl, thank you so, so much. You're incredible.
Thanks, Syl.